Denjoy. And we also have Joanna Wills as the late substitute for Elena Bonfiglioli. Oh, it's hello. All women, what a joy. Oh, well, you're very welcome. You're very welcome, sir. Thank you. Okay, so let's go from the end first and just tell us who you are and why you're here. Just in a minute. Let's start with you, Auvo.
Okay, thank you very much. That is the Bank of the European Union. That is the world's largest multilateral lender with a AAA rating that has a portfolio of 600 billion euros in lending out at any particular moment, annual lending being approximately 80 billion, out of which roughly 1 billion goes into life science sector. The advisory team of the bank has identified a funding gap of approximately 30 to 40 billion over the next 5 years in the life science industry in Europe. And this is just to maintain our current position with regard to USA, not to mention even China, that is catching up really quickly. And we are here to basically discuss with you about the trends, the opportunities, and the needs. Where should this money, albeit being large in size, still insufficient to cover everything, where financing is needed, where that would be better utilized.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Hello? If not, I take this one. Hello?
It is.
Hi. Good morning. Elena Bonfiglioli from Microsoft. I lead our business for Microsoft in health and life sciences across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Why am I here? It's actually a good question. If we look at technology as an enabler for that convergence, that's the way I would like to put it, then it's really to discuss what are the driving forces that will accelerate the convergence and where we can contribute with public-private partnerships, bringing together the stakeholders well beyond probably those traditional players that we are used to see, because I guess there is nobody here from retail industry or financial sector, and those two sectors are actually moving strides quite quickly into healthcare. So how far do we want to push that boundary?
Okay.
Good morning. I'm not Casper Garros, and very sorry. Casper Garros is the COCIR chair of our research and innovation group, and I'm replacing him because he's sick, so big apologies for him. With regards to myself, I'm the Secretary General of COCIR, and COCIR is a trade association, let's say, leading the industry voice. It is an organization created back in 1959 and leading the industry voice of sectors like medical imaging, radiotherapy, digital and electromedical industry. And the reason why I'm here, anyway, I'm always happy to be here and to let's say contribute and participate in those debates, because I believe it's very timely. The reason is, as it was said during the previous talks, we need to have to widen, let's say, the partnership and industry. Let's say we've seen for a couple of years already that industries like digital, that was mentioned a couple of times, are part of the game, and the ecosystem has changed. And as COCIR, let's say, we have established already a research and innovation focus group composed of chief technology officers from our companies, and our companies are, of course, very present in Europe, but they are present also at the global level. And we issued a strategic research agenda back in 2016 that was built on the foundation of the importance of integrated care. approaches. And back in 2016 as well, we created a multi-stakeholder, let's say with other partners, a multi-stakeholder alliance on integrated care. That was at the Parliament, launched at the Parliament, and in fact, on the 10th of October, we also launched a digital health roadmap at the Parliament.
Thank you. Joanna.
Hi, good morning. I'm Joanna Wills, and I'm the research manager for GE Healthcare, supporting collaborations between GE Healthcare and researchers across Northern Europe. And I'm
so
here.
GE Healthcare you're talking about because it's just such a vast company, but so really you're here in the diagnostics capacity or the imaging or?
Well, that's a good point. So you're right. So my next point was that I support collaborations across all of the different parts of GE. Now I know that GE Healthcare, now I know that the diagnostics, that the pharmaceutical side of GE Healthcare has been quite closely involved in IMI projects. But there's the other side of GE with the technology system. And so I'm interested here to see some of the outcomes from IMI and how maybe some of those partnerships can be expanded beyond just pharmaceutical collaborations.
Okay, Claire.
The one working microphone. My name is Claire Skentelbery, and I'm Director General of the Nanotechnology Industries Association. And I should probably state a prior claim in a previous life. I was part of IMI projects from a more biotech perspective. So it's really great to see how well it's continuing to grow. It's really lovely. But I'm here really not just to give you the hard sell on all things nano, which of course I will do, but to look at how you treat it as a converging technology and enabling technology for both diagnostics and therapeutics, and helping sort of normalize the uptake of novel technologies, without making it a particularly unique or difficult challenge to face, particularly for the benefit of patients.
So here we're talking about there are some enabling technologies that run straight through everything, if you like, and nano is one, data is another, but there are other areas which are more the kind of the same machine learning which are on top of those. It needs separate consideration, perhaps. So let's talk first about the challenges. Now, I'm going to ask you all to be brief, but what are the big challenges? And let's talk first about the tech side, and then I want to come to you about more in the investment side. Okay, so let's start with you, Claire. What are the challenges as far as nano is concerned in terms of convergence?
Well, I think there's the challenge that nano faces, that all earlier technologies faces, that there is an awful lot of really early stage technologies that have the potential to be really great, but for them to be implemented into patient care, they need to be very mature before they can be integrated into therapeutics or devices. So it's the same challenges you see across all sectors, is finding the target technologies that are going to be mature enough to develop further. And there's also always the regulatory side. Nano is having increasingly nano-specific aspects within all regulatory frameworks, so it's very important that the regulatory alignment is addressed early rather than it being a nasty surprise later in the product development.
And is it a problem that people just hear the word nano and think, oh my God, it's scary stuff?
Oh, it's so interesting, that question, because nano is already everywhere. It's in the clothes that you wear, the shoes that you wear, the food that you eat. It's on it's a biological format, and it's an engineered sort of chemical format. One of our members addressed it very well, and he said there is a trust deficit to persuade people to take up and integrate nanomaterials into their products because they're worried it will affect the consumer perception of their own product. But to be honest, within healthcare, it's my experience that consumers are much more open to novel technologies because you can address them to very specific clinical unmet needs. So it's the same as we see. It's a different question for food production entirely, but within the healthcare sector, I don't see any kind of consumer pushback on the use of nano in products or processes.
And I think this is something that we're going to address time and time again, is the trust and transparency thing, which I promise you we will discuss in more detail at one of the later panels. Okay, Joanna, let's go to you.
So I think that one of the barriers that we see from GE Healthcare is, yes, there's always regulatory hurdles, but I think we can make good products, we can bring things to market, but what stops the adoption of those technologies is the evidence, and both the clinical justification and the economic evidence, and even training. So I think that's one of the things where these sort of partnerships are important, because maybe we come across, we develop the economic evidence that says it's a faster acquisition. Great. But then you're bringing more people through the department, and there's a knock-on economic impact. And so I think, some of the other speakers have talked about getting all the stakeholders, really, I think, across the patient care pathway involved. And when those things are considered, then it would really support adoption of new technology.
So now I'm going to introduce Philippe, who rather bizarrely wasn't quite included on the panel when he should have been. Introduce yourself, sir.
Good morning, everybody. So, as you can notice, I'm a latecomer. I am Philippe.
Not his fault.
I am Philippe Cleuziat. I'm a research program director within BioMérieux. BioMérieux is a global leader and a diagnostic company. And we are also a latecomer in IMI, since we joined the IMI initiative maybe 1 year ago now. So I'm in charge of developing new technologies and evaluating those in the diagnostic field, and especially for diagnostic and monitoring of infectious diseases. And I'm also in charge of managing public-private partnerships, because those feed our research as well. So I'm the IMI contact person within our company.
Okay, so tell us, if you would, what do you see as being the major challenges?
There are many. It's been highlighted many times this morning that our industry, the industry is a bit siloed. So, and this is true. And when we think of developing new products and in a patient-centric standpoint, I would say, we need to think of integrated business model. We have seen in the past, for example, what we call the personalized medicine, and through the cancer approach, for example, stratifying patients just to give the right drug to the right patient at the right moment and so on. And I think this kind of business model should be applied, globally speaking, and making all actors work together and share the value. And sharing the value is not so obvious, because there are two definitions of the value. The medical value, what it brings to the customer, for an improved outcome, and there is also the economic value. So how you put a product on the market, how you introduce it, how you make it being used. And this goes with pricing, with reimbursement and so on. And I was pleased to hear that many people are encouraging, all these bodies, regulatory bodies, health technology assessment bodies, talk together and really align themselves for where to spend €1 for better outcomes. So the pricing, the reimbursement, every solution should be outcome-based. And this is, I think, the future of making all these actors work together in a continuum of care.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm on a mission, by the way, to ban the word value, because I think it's completely overused and misunderstood by every single person who uses it in a different way. Right, that's my rant over. Okay, tell us, for you, what are the challenges?
Yes, in fact, we have 4 challenges. One today. Yeah? One is what is our capacity to team up between different sectors? Because right now, of course, there are silos. It's not that it's just all technologies have different business model, etc. We should not complain about that. It's what is the capacity to team up between different sectors and to finally make a difference for citizens, healthcare systems, healthcare professionals, and also for industry itself. The second one is giving the growing aging population too little access and too little capacity. And in this case, digitization is absolutely required to optimize the health and care and keep it sustainable at the same condition. So the third one is investment in R&D. Investment in R&D, as it was mentioned at the European Council last May, only 7% of the world population, with only 7% of the world population, Europe is responsible for 20% of the global investment in R&D and 33% of high-quality scientific publications. Yet Europe clearly lags behind breakthroughs, innovative breakthroughs. And this is the reason why we need a targeted health public-private partnership that this will be part of the solution. And the last is the RNI collaboration in health domain. So we don't have today in Europe an organized research and innovation collaboration in the health domain, on the entire chain, on health continuum.
Okay, thank you. So what about you? What are the challenges from a Microsoft point of view?
And I wouldn't necessarily take a Microsoft-only perspective. I'm not here to, do a sales pitch. The point is that if we really believe that data is what's going to transform the delivery of care and realize the promise of precision medicine, then we need to be able to go and shift from a focus on silos of data, could be the electronic medical records, or it could be, looking at genomics data, to ecosystems of data. And that means, at underlying level, having open and fully interoperable platforms. So that is a technology challenge, but is, in a way, also a challenge around standards, is a challenge around the lenses, the optics that we put when we build products, and similarly when we shape partnerships. So I would say there are promises if you look at the FHIR standard for those of you that, from a technology perspective.
FHIR, just to
FHIR.
Explain what FHIR stands for.
So FHIR, not written as the fire that we know, but F for fast, H, health, interoperability, resources. That's a standard that allows you to extract data from the electronic medical records and then to connect it and expose it. And basically that very idea, allows us to really go from one source of data to an ecosystem of data. And so I think if you translate it then to partnership and policies, and you look at how health systems are reorganizing themselves, as hospitals become, the aggregators, if you want, having all of this data available, inviting closer and new partnerships with pharma companies, with technology companies, but also more and more with other sectors that are looking into healthcare. And if I look at the US, look at what's happening in the retail space and the new role that we'll have on delivery of health. So it's a fast-moving set of things, but at the level of data, at the level of the way we shape the platforms, the technology platforms that we build, and the way in which we look at public-private partnerships, we need to be open, scalable, and interoperable. If not, there is no future for modernizing healthcare. No matter which technology company is here to talk and provide services. And with that needs to go clarity on policy and clarity on what we can do in a cloud and intelligent era. A lot of times we hold back because we're not sure, is there the right way in which patient has given consent? Is there the right way in which technology embeds the right to be forgotten? Is that the right understanding of what research, scientific research means under GDPR rules? If there is no clarity, if we have a plethora of implementation at member state level, then, either we don't act or we act and there is mistakes. There were news just of the DPA in Portugal finding an hospital about 400,000 euros just this month because certain things were not in place. Is it technology, is the right policy or procedures? And all of that, I'm afraid, there's a challenge of not acting fast enough because of lack of clarity.
And to think, we used to have the data at the bottom of everybody's bed, didn't we? Anybody could come in and look at the data on the bottom of people's bed, hung on a little sheet, and read it. Yes. So, Auvo, because you're at the EIB, and there's a very, very important point there, that actually what we're seeing is islands of data and people clutching data to themselves, and it actually not being used in the right way. And you're absolutely right, Elena, to unlock it, you really need to get everybody on the same sort of, marching on the same road. Are there ways of that money can be used, investment can be used to actually hasten that, that interoperability? In other words, you only invest in something if they're going to use a particular data standard, for instance.
Thank you. That's a very good question and a very good approach to the big issue that we see. I mean, most of us here in this room are scientists, and we know what data is being published, what little fraction of the data that is being collected during the time of doing or running a trial, and most of that data is perceived to be obsolete and therefore forgotten. We encourage very strongly on interdisciplinary projects. We see something like 3,000 to 4,000 proposals each year, out of which about 150 are looked into more detail, and about 30 life science projects are getting financing. But more and more so, today we try to integrate projects that are cross-functional, that utilize the existing tools that are today available that were not available 10 years ago, to share that data, open source whenever possible. And even within the bank, although I come from the life science division, we do very much cooperation with the other teams, like the IT teams, for instance, so that we even internally integrate where there is a project that could have applications across different disciplines. And therefore, I feel that in the future, this is going to be more and more of a requirement. We have been driving through the Commission to have this integrated into the policies, like, for instance, the continuation of the Horizon 2020, the Horizon Europe, should have a component incorporated into it, and we are working towards that.
Joanna, can I just quickly ask you, am I right in saying that in diagnostics, that you had a common platform? Does anybody know about this? So that devices could talk to a glucometer that was produced by Omron, say, so that at least that they could talk to each other.
That's certainly an initiative. I don't know if that's the name of it.
No, it could be. I may have got the wrong name. Do you know the name?
Yes, you're referring to a standard known as Continua, which actually has an organization behind it that's now called the Personal Connected Health Alliance. So it's a not-for-profit activity that generates standards cross-industry to help devices to communicate with each other and with other technology products. So it's a standard rather than a company-specific.
Okay, thank you. So it's that kind of thing that we need to be thinking about, those enablers that cross several disciplines. Now, coming back to you, Auvo, and then I'll come to you. I wanted to ask you, when you're looking at technologies, I mean, Claire made the point that you don't know when you don't necessarily know which technology to go for because you don't know which are the most mature. How much advice are you seeking cross-sector in order to inform investment decisions?
If you allow me, if I can interject, sorry, because here I believe we are supposed to talk about health research. Of course, interoperability is important, yeah, and there are many activities that are going on interoperability in the field of interoperability. In fact, Deepak was mentioning PCHA, but this is just use cases that are being used at home care settings. But besides that, you have also IHE that are more in the hospital setting. And then you need also standards, base standards in order to make sure that this interoperability takes place. And sorry to interject, but I would like to remind that imaging, because, and this is the reason why I think the question was appropriate for GE, that is a member, of course, of COCIR. Radiology is a domain that many years ago saw the necessity to have interoperability, yeah? And interoperability has come through also success story like DICOM standards that are recognized at the international level. Now, if you talk about interoperability, I think if you look at it holistically, yeah, it's not a problem of technology, honestly. It's a problem of trust and culture, and also a willingness from the member state to ensure that they put proper legislation in place so that interoperability is taking place. Yeah, so we should not too much focus on techie side, because at the end of the day, as Elena was mentioning with GDPR, first there is a problem of trust and compliance, yeah? We don't know yet with the enforcement of GDPR how can we use, optimize use of health data? First, we have no clue because it's a compromise of GDPR, and we are still looking at different countries, how they are looking at it. Also, from a patient perspective, I could be a patient, tomorrow. And also, there is a big question from the healthcare professionals and the patients. What are you going to do with my data? Yeah, and this has to be addressed, as well as, before you just say, okay, let's share all the data, you need to see what the data will be used for. And this is the reason why it's also ethics around it, that needs to be tackled. And the last point, as I mentioned, again, as a techie, we are representing technologies, but at the end of the day, these are tools. If you don't have, it's a bottom-up approach where we've seen interoperability has been fragmented for decades. Yeah, so we need a bottom-up approach. And this is the reason why we are pleased that the Commission has created this new program, Digital Europe, in order to look into implementation and scaling up. And last week we had a conversation with Commissioner Gabriel, where the Commission is also looking at how can they support member states on adoption, let's say on exchange format, on EHRs, how can you exchange, you can have something that can be adopted at country level. So just sorry for interrupting.
But nevertheless, a point very well made there, but you can also use investment as a tool to drive
Absolutely. And I think money is one of the most powerful tools to drive change. We have to kind of distinguish R and D. We often pull them together, but from the bank's point of view, R is much more risky than D. However, we have been able to work together with the Commission to channel some of that money from the R&R program to the EIB, so that we can kind of monitor and give better access to more risky projects than we would traditionally have done in order to safeguard our AAA rating. Because most of the instruments that we give out, they are loans, and therefore, in order for us to remain a credible bank in the world, those loans need to be paid back. And sometimes when an early stage company enters into a research program, they don't have, and nobody has a crystal ball to see how it's going to turn out. It can be a failure, and therefore the loan needs to be written off. And for a bank, that's a bad thing. So therefore, naturally, most of our projects are development projects that are financed. However, when we engage with big companies who have strong balance sheets, it actually doesn't matter if the project fails, as long as the company who is taking the loan is in a position to pay back. And therefore, we are willing to enter in facilities like the infectious diseases financing facility into substantial risk, and we are prepared to take losses. There is something that the Commission guarantees as a first loss piece, and more of those type of products are going to be available at our disposal in the near future.
Okay, I'm going to ask you all what one thing you'd like IMI to do. So,
I think one additional comment you asked. You asked about, do we seek advisory? Of course we seek advisory, and we are dependent on that, and that's the reason why, for instance, I'm here today to interact with you all and get the feedback to see how the world is moving, because we don't see the future any better than anybody else, so we need to work in close cooperation.
Okay.
What would like IMI to do, especially as we are a new actor and in diagnostic joining this IMI community, is really, as we spoke about exchanging data and so on, is lead within Europe in common definitions of what we mean with value. I said value. How do we measure it? How we can have a kind of harmonized definition of value, medical and economic value, because this is going to be the main driver in implementing new solutions, because we spoke about new technologies, new solutions, but how they are going to be adopted, used for the benefit of patients. So this is what we expect, and this is why we are really pleased to join the IMI initiative in that respect. The second thing we would like to see with IMI is, as we said, we are many actors. We don't know us very well, I think. When I discuss with my neighbors, they are in vaccines, we are in diagnostics, then with the people in pharma and so on, there is a continuum of skills and products and so on that do not talk very well to each other. If I take the example of infectious disease, for example, well, you have prevention, infection control, vaccines, diagnostics, drugs, antibiotics, and so on. And all these could be optimized already with what exists in the field. So I think the current tool that we have, the current product, are underused in terms of value. So we can think of doing better with new solutions, but we can also do better with what we have currently, making them work together.
Okay. Claire, what would you like IMI to do?
I think I'd like it to grow on what is already done very well, is that creating clear points where you say, this is the target we wish to address. It's a disease, it's a disorder, it's a diagnostic, and help earlier stage research and technologies understand how they are translated. Because Europe is full of earlier stage technology. It's really great stuff, but a lot of it will never be applied because I think the people that own it aren't really sure how to go through the process and the hard decisions that have to be taken around product development. In our previous anti-infective program, it was a huge learning progress for all of the participants to understand how you take great, exciting, sexy science and actually make it into something that a patient can access. And for me, that's been the biggest benefit of IMI since it started.
And that it really involves patients. I mean, you have to have a co-created future here. You have to have patients say, this is what we want, not simply take it and like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Joanna.
I think speaking on behalf of the GE Healthcare, again, the sort of pharmaceuticals and the tracer team who have been involved in the IMI consortium, is that they've been pleased with the collaborations, but support with the speed to get. I can see one of the most popular questions here is how do we accelerate the adoption
Too many pilots, not enough large scale.
And it was getting those consortiums off the ground and sort of help with facilitating to make things faster.
Okay.
Yes, considering, again, patient to be at the center, because we are all here because we want to optimize the way we give better access to healthcare at the citizen population. We are very supportive of cross-sectoral collaboration and public-private partnership in health, because it's very critical that medical technologies and digital engage in, and because they are playing an important role. When you look at the workflow, again, you look at the prevention, early diagnosis, treatment, and aftercare, and those are important elements. We should not focus only on chronic disease and treatment, but the whole workflow. And with that, I would like to mention not only IMI, but also right now there are discussions going on with the European Commission, with member states on new programs like Horizon Europe, Digital Europe Cohesion Funds. It is very important that we optimize the way the health component is going to be covered and financed.
Okay. Elena, what about you?
Maybe, no, yes. I would sum it up in what I call trusted data collaboratives. It's a concept that really looks at how we leverage the power of the cloud, public cloud, in which we are to share more data from across different stakeholders and accelerate research. And, just to give you a couple of examples, so Microsoft was involved, for example, in supportive Vivli in the US, so a place in which clinical trials could be shared to really accelerate research. Going back to BioMérieux, the point of we have a lot and we don't optimize what we have, I do see the opportunity of sharing more in a trusted, secure way to move faster. And at the same time, if you take pediatric oncology, 175,000 cases for children below 12 years old diagnosed every year. It's a number of a size that is big enough. The point is that it's scattered all around the world. So it's not one organization. How do you make data collaborative so that researchers can really work with pharma companies and go faster? if we keep having our pockets, not only of pilots and pilotitis that affects all of us, but really pockets of data, we are not going to have what it takes. And so having organization that create the right incentives, monetary or policy-wise, to move forward with these data collaboratives, for me, would be fantastic. So, and even if you take the European Union initiative around genomics, you know, how do you make sure that you move to the phenomics? So how do you make sure then you take the omics, the electronic medical records, the imaging, and you can translate imaging now into numerical values and mesh it up with all the rest. Let's move forward.
And that central question that we've come in on Slido, and actually a lot of people have liked, you know, we talk about building trust. Where do you think the IMI can help in setting the foundations for health data ownership framework? And, you know, the concept of ownership is actually quite a difficult one, because when you give a copy of your data to someone else, you know, who owns it then? And with things like genomic data, of course, your data is also your family's data. And who owns that? Is it, you know, your Uncle Tom, or is it you? So there are all sorts of hideous, you know, problems to overcome here. What about you, Auvo? What are the things you think IMI should be doing?
I think we have been discussing very important things here, and there are, of course, problems and obstacles along the way which can be and should be overcome, and will be. I'm confident about that. From the EIP perspective, I think that IMI can help us in identifying the trends, the sort of needs on where money should be channeled, and at the same time keeping in mind that we as a European Union institution are looking for impact. So wherever there is a big impact, especially if it comes through collaborative efforts across these silos, I think they would be looked in a favorable manner. And I feel that organizations like the IMI can play a substantial role on guiding and kind of moving the policies towards the right direction.
So there are a lot of challenges here. Interoperability of data, trust is the thing that absolutely underlies everything. And you have a final point to make?
I like this comment. And if we want to put something together in common, and based on the IMI current model, more and more people, companies, stakeholders are coming. And I discovered myself that the IMI initiative was very powerful. It was a great initiative led by pharma that are able to work all together. They are competing in some extent, but at a pre-competitive stage, they are working fine together. We, as a diagnostic company, we want to do the same. But we have different business model. And when we spoke about the value, what is the value of information? How to share it, how to recognize it, and especially in the business model that we have with IMI, how we take into account what we call the in-kind, you know, it's manpower, skills, databases, hardware, software, and this has come from years of research and so on. And we believe there is a lot of value in there, I mean, from what we bring in the basket, all of us, but it should be also considered more broadly, and not only by the way it's being done so far, which was a great initiative to acknowledge the contribution of industry. But I think if you speak of medtech companies, IVD companies, other companies, information companies, which are going to join the IMI initiative, we should have not only a one-size-fits-all model for acknowledging the contribution of companies, but a system that can also adapt and be tweaked to each business and sector as well.
Okay. That's a helpful comment there. So I think we're going to come to the end of our discussions for the moment. I realise that there is so much more that we could have discussed at this point, but I'm afraid time is against us. I want to finish, though, this morning's session by asking, have we got anybody in the audience, health contact points? Have we got anybody in the audience who is a health contact point? Oh, right, all right then. Oh, there was one over there. Hello, stand up and wave. Stand up and wave, because I just want to say that the health contact points Net2 is a European network. It's funded by the Commission under Horizon 2020 programme. The network is composed of national contact points. Hello, which country? Spain. Hello, Spain. To the Horizon 20. They offer services and activities to applicants, potential applicants, such as brokerage, event, and partner search. So if you need a friend, everybody has got a friend in their own country. You don't all have to phone a friend in Spain.
I love you all.
Yes, love you all, very lovely. And I think you'll see some videos about that during the coffee break. So would you please thank our panel and go and prepare yourselves. Fortify yourselves with coffee and lots of croissants for the sessions ahead. Thank you.